You can clap for these guys. Thank you so much. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Eileen Wiviott. I'm the minister here at the Unitarian Church of Evanston. So grateful for all of you coming out today. I want to welcome beloved family and friends of Gay Menges to this celebration of her life. We come together today to honor her, to comfort one another in our grief, and to share our memories of this remarkable person. She was a devoted mother and grandmother, a loyal and trusting friend, a hard worker, and a very generous soul. We're here to comfort and support her two sons, John and David, whom she loved deeply, and her grandchildren, Gabby and Elizabeth, and Evan and Angel and Christian. And she adored you. She really did. They are all grateful for your presence here from the many parts of her life. We come together in this place where she was a dedicated member for 24 years. In this community she discovered through grief after the sudden death of her beloved husband, Robert. She was involved in many things: small groups, book groups, rummage sales, Christmas pageants, and most recently she was a member of the Anti-Oppression Task Force. She will be so dearly missed. She will also be missed among her friends at the Mather, many of whom I know are here today as well, where she was a caregiver and brought people together. And she enjoyed so much ongoing learning and growth there. There's so much we can say about Gay, about her compassion and generosity, her trustworthiness, her intelligence and lifelong curiosity, her love of music and books and poetry, her poetry, which is at the back table. And we will do our best today to reflect on and celebrate the many aspects of her life and who she was. Yet we are mindful that there are no words that can fully express, and no music that can adequately capture all of who she was. Our tributes fail, of course, to keep her here with us. But Gay didn't want or expect that. She was fortunate enough to be able to plan her departure. She helped plan this service with her sons and her grandchildren, and I'm grateful that I was able to be a part of that a little bit. She wanted to talk about the way that she wanted to end her life, and she wanted to be in charge of that, and God bless her, she was able to be. She didn't want us to linger in regret or sorrow over her death. She was grateful for her life. She recognized the many privileges and joys that she had. She knew how blessed she was to have a loving family and a long and fulfilling career and a faithful community of friends. She faced the end of her life with courage and with honesty. She was prepared, a gift she did not take for granted, to leave nothing undone or unsaid. So though we are sad that she is gone, let us celebrate her life and the spirit of all life. Together, let us gather our courage so that we can go on living and loving courageously without her. Let us listen to music and share poetry and memories with joy and sorrow as we honor her generous spirit and express our gratitude for having her in our lives. We commit ourselves through this gathering to keep her memory and legacy alive in the many ways we can. Her memory and spirit will endure when we listen to jazz, when we reflect on poetry, read a good book, accompany a dear friend through a hard time. Commit to learning and growing and acting for justice when those who loved her carry on in these ways. Gay's spirit also lives on. I invite Gay's sons, David and John, to come forward to light the Chalice Flame. This is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith of which Gay was a part and where she experienced supportive community and a rich spiritual life. This chalice symbolizes the fire of commitment to justice, the warmth of beloved community, and the light of truth and wisdom. Nice. Thank you. Our first hymn, and this was selected by Gay, is number 151. We will have the words on the screen. I Wish I Knew How by Billy Taylor and Dick Dallas. You are invited to rise in body or spirit if you'd like and sing along. Thank you. We'll hear from Pat Grow now for the reflection.
I think I can take this off now. I met Gay in the late 1990s when she joined a book group I was in. She was the hostess for our book discussion in July. So that helps you know how long she was with us. She won my heart right away because she said she wanted to read classics. When it was her turn to choose the book, she chose Moby Dick. I was kind of thinking Jane Austen, but you know, hey. And we did a credible job. She impressed me when she told me her favorite author was Faulkner. Fortunately, she never asked for us to discuss that. I quickly found out that she was the one to call if I wanted to go to some weird art show in some godforsaken gallery somewhere in the city. She was up for it all. She was a game girl and never got out of her element if we got lost. We also attended some strange plays together. It took a very long time, though, before we found out we both loved jazz. And I'm not sure why, because we did talk about our children. I did know one of her sons was a musician, but somehow. So after that, I was invited or informed when John would play at Katerina's, now long gone, and we were regulars at the Whiskey Lounge and some other jazz venues in the city. I then found out that John was not the only talented Menges, because when Gay was getting ready to move from her house to her condo, I stopped by and saw a little table. It was made of wood, had a copper top, and the legs went this way, but somehow it stood upright. I didn't understand it, and I loved it, and I asked if I could buy it. I intended to give it to my son as a housewarming gift for his first solo apartment. I was permitted to buy it. I don't know if David ever saw the money, but that's, you know, can't be responsible for that. My son was delighted, told me it was by far the coolest thing in his apartment. It was actually the only cool thing in his apartment, but I didn't say that. So through the years, Gay and I had a lot of conversations about a lot of things. We shared many interests. She was the person so well described, generous, always interested, always interesting, good-hearted, and what I noticed more this last year, extremely honest, very honest. And I think all of you who knew her were privileged to do so. I certainly feel that way. Thank you.
I was asked to read this poem that Gay really appreciated by Ishmael Reed. When I die, I will go to jazz. As Ted would say, let them go to heaven or let them go to hell. When I die, I want to go to jazz. Who needs Gabriel when we got Clifford, Clark, Kenny, and Bix? You can add Thad to that distinguished mix. And Prez and Billy sit on their thrones, and their court wear pork pies, gardenias, and checkered vests, and the tempo of the place is like Denzel best, with Mingus and Walton doing the chores on bass. A place where Satch is Avatar and Sun Ra, Gil, and Count are resident sages, and among those on trumpet are Fats and Hot Lips Page. with Kluck on drums and Tran on axe. 1,000 years of jamming, for what more could I ask? Let them go to heaven, let them go to hell. When I die, I will go to jazz. Don't surround me with cherubim with their golden locks, a place where there's no vodka on the rocks. And spare me the diet of milk and honey in our high up 52nd Street. It ain't all about the money. What use are angels singing a cappella when I can have Dinah, Sarah, a scatting Ella, a tisket, a tasket, I lost my yellow basket. Mr. Paganini, please play my melody. I want to spend eternity in a place where they can swing it. No need for paradise, where anybody can wing it. The folks in jazz might not dress in white garments, but they're as natty and clean as a stylish Errol Garner, or Duke in his tails, gloves and a black top hat, and St. Peter as Babs Gonzalez saying, "Welcome home, cats." The residents of jazz are bopping in the aisles as Diz and Bird swap fours with Miles and spare me the sounds of celestial harmonics. I prefer something like jazz at the Philharmonic. Jumping with my boy Sid in the city, when I die, I will go straight to jazz. No need for me to encounter the Naz, and don't send me off with no razzmatazz. Some bars from around midnight will do just fine, and lacking that, some Earl Father Hines.
Gay and I were friends for 24 years, and in that time, it became very clear to me that she was very passionate about her family. She was very proud of her sons, even though she and Bob were academics. But as you've probably discovered, her sons took very different career paths, and she was very proud of John's jazz work, and she was very proud of David, who became a skilled carpenter and crafter. And then the grandchildren started to appear, and she was thrilled to have grandchildren. And Eileen has already introduced you to them. And more recently, she was excited, probably about the last 4 years, maybe, I don't know, Gabrielle can correct me, to have great-grandbabies, thanks to Gabrielle. So I think she considered herself really blessed. But her life was not always easy. She had mountains to climb. She had some very dark times in her life. And it was during one of those dark times that we met. We both joined a grief counseling and support group when our husbands died 24 years ago. Out of that group, though, came a core group of 6 women, most of whom are here today, and we have been friends for 24 years. Ellen's here, and Patty, and Miriam, and Ruth. And we continued to get together frequently over the last 24 years, celebrating all the events that happened in all of our lives. During the pandemic, of course, we had to meet on Zoom. I told John the other day that Gay was our techie and Zoom master, which he got a big kick out of. You're right. He thinks we're in big trouble, ladies. So anyway, but we'll muddle through and we'll figure it out. The other thing that she did besides joining the grief group was she joined this church. And as Eileen referred to, she really threw herself into the life of this church. And she was active on committees. She participated in all kinds of events and activities. One of her favorites was the annual pageant at the end of the year. She was in the back putting costumes on people who were participants in what was actually a very spontaneous and somewhat chaotic and often hilarious you're all laughing already because you've been there, Christmas pageant. And the other thing, of course, was the rummage sale. Those of us who worked the rummage sale for years found it to be exhilarating, exhausting, but also a lot of fun. And if there was anything that Gay wanted, it was to have fun. She liked to have people over for dinner. She liked to go to the theater. She liked to go to concerts. And some of you may not know, but she used to go scuba diving in the Caribbean with Miriam, who is a member of our group, and that gave her a lot of pleasure. The other thing she liked to do was every spring she planted flowers in the flower boxes that David made for her balcony. I was thinking the other day about that and about how, just like the flowers that she planted, Gay also leaned into the sun. When there were dark times, she looked for the light in her life. Partly because, as I said, I think she just liked to have fun. I think she would love to be here today. I think she would love to be hanging out with all of you guys. And I think if she were here today, she would want to say to her family, to her friends, to Eileen, to all her UCE buddies, thank you for the joy that you brought to her life. Thank you.
As you all know, I have 3 kids, so I do have to have notes. Earlier this afternoon, we as a family were able to go to the cemetery and lay my grandmother to rest next to my grandfather. On behalf of my entire family, I would like to thank everyone, relatives, friends, and attendees who have come here today to honor this incredible woman. It is difficult at best to stand before you and try to find the words to honor my grandmother. As I have found, words frequently fall short in capturing someone as they truly are. As I was preparing for this, I was having trouble getting started. So naturally, I went to Google for some help. I didn't find anything that worked or anything that was near what I wanted to say. But there was a website that suggested you should view this as a final gift to a loved one. So, Grandma, this one's for you. I hope you approve. Okay, let me first try to put everyone, including myself, at ease. She did not want this to be a sad day. She really didn't. In fact, she reminded us multiple times to make sure we knew that. So, for a moment, I would like to shift our thoughts from how much we will miss her to a memory you have laughing with her. I know we had many. She was a woman who loved to share moments with her family and friends. And she found joy in the simplest of times and never said no to anything new. Before I get into this, I'd like to share a quick memory. A few short months ago, I took a road trip to Chicago along with my grandma, Sandy. Some of you may have met. She was a great friend of Gay's. They regularly would have coffee or tea over the phone together since as long as I can remember. We got the news that she'd be going into hospice care and quickly made the drive to Evanston. We actually were all here. Everyone carved out a few days to get together and share some time, not knowing how much we would have left. It was one of the most special trips I had to see her. I was able to introduce my third-born son, Tommy. Who was 4 months old at the time. She was always a proud grandmother, never hesitated to boast about any of us, given the opportunity. But experiencing her with her great-grandsons was something I was so thankful I got to witness. My older 2 loved making trips to Chicago, usually on the front or tail end of many of our other trips to Florida or South Carolina. And one of their favorite memories was swimming in the pool in her previous apartment building, which honestly was probably a favorite for all of us. But seeing her with Tommy a few months ago was something I will cherish forever. It was beautiful and peaceful. She was so in love, and everyone at the Mather knew it. John wanted me to share a memory as well. He mentioned one of his favorite memories was also with his mom, his children, Evan and Angel. In 2021, they were able to do one of their favorite things with Grandma, go to the Natural History Museum, and share their love of knowledge. They pushed her in a wheelchair, and she had so much fun. My grandmother has seen more places in her life than I probably will ever see, and she never stopped wanting to see more. Her sense of adventure was so admirable. Fear was never a factor, and new things always excited her. She was so lucky to have such wonderful friends to see the world right alongside her. The calendar, or the map, hanging in her kitchen was proof of that, along with a photo she proudly showed everyone sitting beside a Bengal tiger and riding on a camel. Speaking of those photos were her favorite. She never hesitated to remind any of us if we hadn't shared any recent ones with her. And she quickly would remind you to email them instead of sending them to her smartphone because it was the only way she knew how to print them, even if we'd shown her how to use the app on her phone. She would print them and would cover the front of her fridge. Another thing my grandmother loved was to eat. And when I say eat, I mean meals fed her soul. Not entirely because of the food, though. Whether she was cooking for one of her many dinner parties she would throw or enjoying a meal at a new restaurant, she loved a good... It was something that brought people together in her mind. I shared many, many meals with her and her friends, who I'm so blessed to have gotten to know, when I would come visit. It was honestly one of the things I most looked forward to. She can probably take credit for most of the reason I love to cook and am more adventurous when traveling and booking places to eat. If you knew my grandmother, you knew she was stubborn and a planner. Whether it came to picking up the tab or insisting we do something fun when we were here for a visit, you could not tell her no. She would very abruptly shush you if you tried. I find myself replaying that in my head recently. I am so thankful for this. I can speak for my family when I say we all enjoyed going to Second City, trips to various museums, boat cruises on Lake Michigan, different summer things she would sign us up for, and always looking for live music to sit and enjoy. This would extend into her visiting us in New York or Minnesota. And I mean it when I say we were always doing something, even if that something included something she did not want to participate in. She would insist we go, and she would stay back and read a book. Thank you for allowing me to honor my grandmother, who was selfless and giving, warm and nurturing, honest, admirable, and kind, just to name a few. I have learned so many things from her, including staying in touch and making time for the ones we love is the most important thing in the world. She would have been so honored and humbled by all the love from her family and friends here today to celebrate her life. Since her passing, there has been both smiles and tears. Tears for the loss we have suffered, but also the joy we have knowing she is at peace and with my grandfather now, and no doubt happier than we have ever seen her. And smiles while remembering the mark this woman made on our hearts, minds, and souls. Today I ask that we leave here and choose to smile. It is what she wanted, and I know she is stubbornly watching down to make sure we all do that. Thank you. Sorry, 1 second. Gotta get my notes.
Hello. If you don't know me, I'm Izzy or Elizabeth Menges, one of her grandchildren. As a bit of a before the poem, I just wanted to say, among all of the facets of learning that she loved, well, to learn, poetry and the arts of literature was something she especially loved, especially in the last few years. Even as traveling became more difficult for her, she found that the arts helped her not only grieve, but to show her expressions and be able to think more while not just sitting around doing nothing. Even though I also love literature, poetry was something I never fully understood. And it was only until recently that through her poems that I started to truly appreciate not only poetry as a whole, but especially her form of poems. They were super raw and, as if you saw some of her poems, very emotional. She had every connection to every poem that she had, and it was her true, honest feelings. And while I'm still not the greatest at poetry, she still loved every time I did, which was only a couple times. And even if it was the most terrible poem, she would still rave to her friends about how great it was. I even joined one time in her poetry group at the Mather, and she loved it. And we said that we would do it again, but things happened. So even though my poem probably isn't the best in the world, I know that she would still love it, even if she was here with us. So even though it doesn't encapsulate her life, I hope you enjoy this. Titled Beloved. All her life, no matter struggle or stress, loss or gain, she always loved those around. Traveling like a soaring bird, reading and writing like a wise scribe, even till the end. She was talking and planning, generous beyond no bounds. Even through tragedy and heartbreak, she still found happiness in her work, friends, and family. Words meant the world to her, from conversation with friends, letters and cards, and her beloved poems. Even though they were her world, she in turn created new worlds with words, by poems or jokes at the poker table. She loved everyone, and everyone loved her. Her life was a happy one, and she is grateful to everyone here today. May this not be about her death, but a celebration of life. Look fondly and not in sorrow, for she couldn't ask for a better group of friends and family. Thank you.
Bear with me while I get my notes out. I'm kidding, of course. Being silly. John, you wanted me to be silly, right? Okay, I can do that. When John called me last week and told me that Gay had passed away, we shared some stories. And he called me the next day, and he said, David and I would like you to speak at Mother's service and share some of those stories, because we'll need a little levity. We've already had some, so I'm just going to pile on. One of the stories I told John last week had to do with the backyard at 1120 Elmwood. And I got into town early enough today to drive by there, and the memories. But one in particular stands out for me, and it involves gardening. But it wasn't in the spring, Alice. It was in the fall. She always had me help her plant her damn tulip bulbs. And as many people have already said, she was a planner. She had everything organized. She had little graphs and maps of where tulip bulbs had been planted from year to year. And she would just tell me, dig here, dig here, dig here, dig here. I think the last time I helped her was late October, one of those cold, wet October Saturdays, and she and I were in the backyard at 1120 Elmwood on our hands and knees, digging in the dirt, planting bulbs. And I looked up at the house. I said, Gay, look who's looking through the window. And there was Bob. And Bob was just, that looked like, you poor fool, you poor fool. And I guess I was. But as has been mentioned, Gay usually got her way, and even though you knew you should say no, you always ended up saying yes to her. I have a friend back home in Effingham, Illinois, who likes to say that he collects characters, people in his life that surround him, that add to his life, whether it be, their traits, their attributes, their quirkiness, their eccentricities, their characters. And we all have characters in our life. And our lives each one of us have a story. So our lives are kind of like a novel that has characters. Gay was a character in my life, as she was in all of yours. So I need a show of hands. How many people have read the book, A Prayer for Owen Meany? Okay. I and a few others here consider it one of the great novels of the 20th century. So if you haven't read it, give it a try. But I was thinking about that book because the very first line begins, "I am doomed to remember a boy with a wrecked voice." Do you know where this is going? Gay once asked me to paint her condo, and I did. After the fact, she decided that it wasn't just enough to paint the walls in the kitchen. She wanted the inside of the cabinets painted as well. And I don't mean the entire cabinet, just the back wall. So when you opened the door, you would see the color that was on the wall at the back of that cabinet. I said, "Gay, that seems silly because you're going to have dishes there and cans and whatnot. You're not going to see that color." "I don't care. I want it done." "But it seems like a lot of waste of time and money." "I don't care. I want it painted." I said, "I can understand, Gay, if you had glass in the front of that door and you could see into it, but you don't." And she said, "I don't care. I'm going to pay you. Do it. Do it." And that was Gay. And I did it. And I don't know who inherited or bought that condo. I assume it's still painted tomato red or something. I don't know who would be silly enough to do it otherwise. But that was part of her charm too, that voice. And if my friend talks about quirkinesses, and I don't want to focus on that a whole lot, but she had a very unique voice. She really did. And a friend of mine here today says that I've spent too much time with her that I can imitate that voice. Well, I wish I had more time with her to hone it some more. But I think we probably all know Gay's political points of view. I once asked her, "What do you think about the orange-headed guy?" "He's toxic, toxic." So, imitation is the best form of flattery, right? And so that's how I wanted to honor her. If I were editing, and I'm going to edit that line from Owen Meany. And instead of saying, "I am doomed to remember a boy with a wrecked voice," I want to say, "I am blessed to remember a woman with a unique voice." And it has nothing to do with being forceful or emphatic, even glass-shattering emphatic. But it was a voice that also contained, as some people have already mentioned, gentleness and kindness and compassion and wisdom. And there's one thing that happened when I was driving up here this morning from Effingham. I can't believe it's going to be 24 years, but next month, her beloved Bob would have been celebrating a birthday. And it's September 22nd? 20th? Oh, don't remember Grandpa? 22nd? Okay, so I'm right again. All right. So that year, September of '98, 6 months after Bob had passed away, I had flowers sent to Gay at the office of McDougall Littell. And I wrote a little note, go with the flowers, saying, thinking of you today on what would have been Bob's 60th birthday, wishing you peace and comfort and solace. Love, Ron. I looked up from my cubicle. I had a cubicle, she had an office, which tells you something about where we stood. And she's standing there, and I said, "Yes, can I help you?" And she looked at me with steely eyes. "God damn you." And I said, "You're welcome." And she said, "No, it's just so sweet." And this is where the wisdom came in. She taught me something that day that I try to do to this day. She said, "I get why people don't talk about Bob. They're afraid it'll make me sad." She said, "Guess what? I can't be any sadder. I think about him all the time. And to talk about him keeps him alive somehow. Those memories of Bob, those stories that people have about Bob." And that's kind of what we're doing today too, aren't we? We're telling stories about Gay, and that's how we can keep her memory alive, to remember special dates, stories, times we had with that person. And I would encourage all of you to stay in touch over the next few weeks and months, because Gay told me, she said, when somebody dies, you have lots of people there for the first few days, and then one by one they drift off. And it's when you're sitting at home alone, and you have to sit through grief. She taught me that too. The only way through grief is through. But there are times you wish somebody would come by with a pie, or somebody would pick up the phone, or somebody would text you. And so I've always remembered that. So with some of my own family and friends, I try to remember birthdays and anniversaries and acknowledge that person, that they were here. So that's something she taught me, that voice of wisdom. And if she were to be emphatic about it, she would say, do it, do it. Anyway, this is the time I had originally planned to close, but driving into town today, I passed by, I can't call it guaranteed rate field, that just sounds stupid. I passed by Comiskey Park. And when I first started going to Comiskey Park, the old Comiskey Park, Bill Veeck was the owner of the White Sox. And I was thinking about Bill Veeck. And he was a maverick. He was different. He was unique. He was a character. And I mean, some of you who know Chicago baseball and Bill Veeck know that that's the case. And it's ironic somehow I'm talking about a sports figure, because Gay really wasn't versed. I think she knew the difference between a football and a baseball. But Bill Veeck, he was a voracious reader. He had to soak his leg for hours on end before he could put that wooden leg on. But I bet he and Gay could probably share some stories and thoughts and opinions on novels and things. But after Bill Veeck passed away, there was a new edition of his autobiography that came out, and Bob Verdi of the Chicago Tribune wrote an afterword. And in that, he concluded it by saying, at what Bill Veeck did, he wasn't just only the best, he wasn't only the first, he was the only. And I was thinking about that with Bill Veeck, and I thought, that's Gay Menges. She was the only. There'll never be another like her. And I'm so blessed and honored that she was such a major character in my life. Thank you.
Gay and I met in the choir in 2002, before I had even joined UCE. She hosted the end of the year potluck that June and had just put her house up for sale. And I remember thinking it would be really hard to leave that lovely and welcoming place. As we got acquainted, we discovered that we had a number of interests in common, among them a love of theater. And I will always be grateful to her for introducing me to the Wirtz Theater student productions at Northwestern. We got season tickets, which we always called the best bargain on the North Shore, and never missed a play, often attending on opening weekends and staying for the talkbacks. We also subscribed to Timeline Theater in Chicago and Fleetwood Jourdain in Evanston, with, of course, great meals and conversation after each performance. As the years passed, we recruited others for our Northwestern outings and made it a party. Of course, COVID interrupted this pleasure, but we subscribed again for this past year's work season and attended until Gay no longer felt up to it. I also love jazz, and being a friend of Gay's gave me a ringside seat at John's appearances at a club in Chicago called Katerina's. I don't think I ever missed any of those performances either. The chance to get so close to the musicians and watch the interactions and the finger work on the instruments was a joy. We also liked many of the same authors and exchanged tips about new finds and personal favorites. I did enjoy reading poetry, especially aloud, but she had so much greater background and more knowledge about it than I. I have to confess that I'd never even seen her poetry until today. So it goes to show you can know somebody for 20 years and have so much more to learn. Anyway, one year she had to bow out at the last minute from a workshop on Mary Oliver that she'd planned to do at the Lake Geneva Fall Retreat and asked me to sub for her. At the time, I wasn't all that familiar with Mary Oliver and was not so sure I was up to the task, but of course I said yes. She gave me a thick folder of poems and thoughtfully prepared materials with discussion questions that uncovered all the depth and beauty of all those word images. The discussion was easy, fun, and enlightening, and I felt as though she'd given me a treasure. I was hooked and went right out to buy some Mary Oliver books. I have to confess, I also walked away from her apartment last week with a few of her Mary Oliver books. We worked together at 10,000 Villages, where I was employed for years, and she was a volunteer. And at UCE, we shared many interests, such as our fair trade cart and the anti-oppression task force. I was in charge of the giving house, and she helped me sort the donations each month. And because I don't drive, she also transported them to the recipient location. And of course, there was the rummage sale, where we worked side by side in the clothing room. About 5 years ago, I had a serious accident and was unable for 2 months to climb the stairs to my third floor condo. I spent the first month with my daughter in the south suburbs, and then when I was feeling the need to get back to Evanston, Gay invited me to stay with her in her apartment at Omni Towers. As many have found during the COVID shutdown, there's nothing like spending 24/7 over weeks in the same few rooms to make or break a relationship. It only strengthened ours. And that was another big gift from Gay to me. We had a great time together, had many in-depth discussions, and I learned that she was a person to trust with deep feelings and concerns, one who would never judge, offer advice without my asking, or try to change my mind. The pandemic put many of the things we loved on hiatus, but we could still go out to lunch or dinner, even though mostly outdoors, and take walks by the lake until too soon she couldn't really walk that far. But still we could visit for hours in the Mather Gardens, stopping by to admire her own personal patch, which she tended with loving care. The last time, late in July, that we had a lunch together in the Mather dining room, she showed me the little hollow under her chrysanthemums where she'd seen a bunny hiding. Gay's final gift was a model of how to die with dignity and courage. She knew weeks or maybe months ago that she would not be around much longer, and talked about it apparently easily and without fear. She'd made a lot of carefully detailed plans for the inevitable. And in fact, I heard her on the phone only a couple of days or so before the end, making arrangements for where her family would stay. Over the last weeks, as she stepped back from involvement in UCE projects such as the task force, she wanted to be kept informed and updated after every meeting. And even as her health problems and all the attendant indignities increased, she continued to come to church. It was surely a struggle, but she needed to be with people. And she was so upbeat and engaged that I think many people didn't realize how precarious her condition was. On Thursday, August 4th, I attended a performance that John gave with his band at the Mather. But since John had to go back to New York for a short time, I stayed over. John and the band were a great hit with an enthusiastic audience, and dinner in the Mather dining room that night was festive and fun. Gay never went out of her apartment after that, and yet my time with her for the next few days seemed in many ways like any normal visit. Meals together in her kitchen, lots of good conversation and reminiscing, and not at all sad. Then John returned, just as they had planned, and I went home. I was so grateful to have had those last days with her, and grateful also that at the end she had a loved one with her. Kay was a remarkable person and a great and beloved friend. I miss her so much, and I will always treasure the memories of our friendship.
Of course. Christian, come on up. Christian is Gay's grandson.
Hey there. I didn't have anything prepared today, but I was very inspired by all of you sharing, and I wanted to share one of my favorite stories from my grandmother. Ron was a big inspiration, and the levity here. And there's a photo right in front of the map back there of all of us together. I believe it was on her 80th birthday. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I was very surprised that she picked out a game hall for her 80th birthday for all of us, our family members, to come together and play, air hockey and things like that. My grandmother always supported my choices, but she was never afraid to voice her own opinion in the matter, specifically when it comes to cutting my hair. Right now it's fairly long. I actually recently cut just a few inches off in homage to her, but on that day, I really wanted to surprise her because she would always ask, well, what are you doing with your hair, Christian? And so without her knowledge, before her birthday party, I made an appointment at a local barber shop and chopped everything off. My hair was about down to here, and I cut it to about an inch and a half, maybe. What I did, I asked the barber to tie it all up and put it in a bag for me, and I put on a hat. And so I showed up to her birthday party just a few minutes late as everyone was gathering, and I handed her the bag with my hat on. And she opened up the bag, and she kind of chuckled. She didn't really understand what was going on, and I took my hat off. And I'm going to step back because there's a certain noise that everyone's familiar with coming from my grandmother that will always be burned into my brain. And she screamed. The whole restaurant stopped. There was people coming to check on her. And she dropped everything and hugged me as hard as she could. She loved it, and she still brought it up until the last moments. I remember a few weeks ago we were on the phone. She's like, I don't mind if you didn't do anything, but I have to ask, have you done anything with your hair? I've always admired her ability to unapologetically be herself and express her opinions, and without need of overstepping into other people's beliefs or way of living. She was really who she was and unafraid to be that way. I admire that about her. Thank you.
Great impression of Gay. What a beautiful tribute this has been to her and to her life. Spirit of Life, we are grateful to be together for this time of remembering and celebrating the life of Gay Menges. She touched the lives of all of us in this room and so many beyond this room in countless ways. We know that her impact on our hearts and the world will remain. With tenderness and reverence, Gay's mortal remains were purified and returned to the natural elements from which she came, and now we carry her spirit in our hearts, where we hold in sacred recall our memory of her. I want to close with this poem by Mary Oliver, which I didn't know you were going to say that, Betty, but I just felt like this was fitting. When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps his purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does toward silence. And each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was a bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. And certainly, Gay did so much more than that. May we remain open to the experiences of life with joy and reverence as Gay did, for that is how we honor her most faithfully. May we carry her with us through acts of kindness, moments of joy, a love of learning, a spirit of generosity. Mindful of our own mortality and of the gift that life is, may we here and now resolve to live a little more closely to our values, to care a little more deeply for others, to risk a little more often, and may we tell someone very clearly that they are valued and they are loved. As David and John extinguish the chalice, let us hold this moment with gratitude and hold each other through our grief, so that we may continue to love boldly even as we reckon with loss. Knowing even as the sacred spark of life is extinguished, her light will still burn bright with all the memory and hope of its brilliance across our lives. Our closing hymn, again selected by Gay, is Amazing Grace, number 205 in the hymnal if you have one of those, but the words again will be on the screen. Please join in singing. Before our service concludes, the family would like to invite you to stay for food and refreshments in the back and to share your memories and stories of Gay. Let our faith in the power of love remain. May we continue to live with courage and wonder, and may we be a blessing to each other and to each life we touch. Thank you for being here today.